Good afternoon or good morning, wherever you are, and welcome to the QEM Heroes webinar series. I'm Christine Wood, and I serve as the Assistant Program Director for the Heroes Fellows Program at QEM. And for more than 30 years, QEM has been a national catalyst for STEM education transformation and research capacity building. Currently, the QEM network serves nearly 900 colleges and universities and reaches more than 8,000 individuals nationwide. This webinar is part of the HEROES initiative. The HEROES program brings together researchers with experience in the federal government to lend their expertise and support to the STEM research and education communities. Our fellows are here to provide tools and tips for navigating the funding landscape, developing STEM programs and partnerships, and improving talent retention in in-demand fields. We hope this series promotes engagement with our HEROES fellows and provides valuable resources to our participants. During the webinar, we invite you to use the Q&A tool to ask questions. And as a reminder, the webinar recordings and slides will be available in the QEM Resource Hub. By attending this webinar, you will be added to the QEM network and granted access to the Resource Hub by email. And I'm so proud to introduce our presenters today. Dr. Greg Davis was a particle physicist at the University of Rochester and Northwestern, where he contributed to the Higgs boson discovery. He then came to DC as a AAAS fellow. After the fellowship, he served for 16 years at the Institute for Defense Analysis and did turns in a congressional commission and the Department of Commerce. Dr. Davis's analyses have contributed to governmental decisions large and small. Shadei Laird is a naval systems safety engineer whose research background focused on safety analysis and risk mitigation for complex naval systems, with prior experience supporting ammunition and ship self-defense systems. She has extensive experience in STEM education and supporting engineering workforce development programs such as the Science, Mathematics, and Research for Transformation, or SMART Scholarship for Service program. In addition, she has also coordinated the College of Southern Maryland's Workforce Development Program with the University of Maryland College Park and the Naval Air Warfare Center Aircraft Division. Lastly, she has been a participant in the U.S. Army Sustainment Command's internship program for engineers. So without further ado, I'd like to turn the floor over to our presenters today.
Thank you for the introduction, Christine. And before I go any further, I've been warned that I should really tell you what you hear Shadei and I talk about today is our opinions and our ideas. They do not necessarily represent QEM Network, the Department of War, or any other organization or government agency that you've heard of or not. So let's get into it. The critical technology areas of the Department of War. The first thing you'll notice is I'm calling it the Department of War. That's somewhat controversial. By statute, we do not have a Department of War anymore and haven't since 1947. We do have a Department of Defense. However, the executive branch has decided that it's going to be called the Department of War. And so if you're working with the people over there, that is what you should call it. They have a long history, the civil servants of working there, and sometimes they do push back on what comes from their leadership, and sometimes they don't. Usually they don't. They know their primary job is to serve the political leadership. And this is not the kind of thing they're going to push back on. If you talk to any of them, they work at the Department of War, and that's who they are. And they know it could shift back when the next administration comes in, but for now, that's who they are. So they also sometimes use euphemisms. For example, an engagement in the Department of War usually doesn't involve a diamond ring, and you don't want to be anywhere near a target that gets serviced. But if you get them at the right time, you may hear them say something like, well, we blow stuff up and kill people, but they don't use the word stuff. So let's talk about what they actually do and how they do it. These photos are not picked at random. Let's start with this one up here. This shows that we've got a tactical aircraft right here. This is an A-10 Warthog. It carries the largest gun that's ever been put onto an airplane, or at least one of the largest guns ever put onto an airplane. And it's doing mid-air refueling so that it can keep flying even after it would otherwise run out of fuel. They can increase the endurance of aircraft by doing this. Very few countries have this capability. We were the first to do it. It's technically complicated in many different ways, and we can do that. And I'm sure that there was academic research involved in being able to design aircraft that can do this, both the aircraft that can offload the fuel, the KC-46 tanker, and the pods to receive it. And the planes that can receive it include small planes like this one, but also really large planes, C-17 cargo aircraft, and even Air Force One can take on fuel while flying.
Oh, Greg, we have a comment in the chat
I'm
We
in trouble
can't see
already.
the screen, and please indicate which photo you're referring to.
Oh, can you guys see the mouse moving across the picture on the top right?
Okay.
Can you see the mouse?
People in the chat are saying they can see the screen and they can see the screen and mouse.
Okay. So
So I think
that's
we're
what I
okay.
meant to do is use the mouse to point to this photo. So now if we go to the photo at the top center, what you're seeing here is an MH-47 helicopter. This is a variant of the Chinook that's been around a long time, but it's got that long probe coming out of it. That's so that we can do helicopter mid-air refueling. This is even more complicated technology. This bird is used by special forces, so it has all kinds of sensors and communications equipment on it that most helicopters don't carry. Even if I knew what they were, and I don't, I couldn't tell you all the details of it. Um, but there's a lot of stuff in there, and it's been developed. Some of it by small groups, I'm sure. And then if we look at this photo on the left, you can see a launch vehicle. The Department of War launches satellites for many different kinds of missions of communication and sensing. I don't know what payload was on that particular launch, but there's a lot of very sophisticated technology in there. And then if we look at this photo in the lower left, in green, we see really the oldest form of warfare. It's infantry, two people walking around carrying weapons, but it's also a green image. And the reason is because it was made with an image intensifier tube, which is a pretty sophisticated piece of technology. This photo might have been taken at night with only the stars and the moon to light it up, but it looks like day because of the way these tubes work, which is very impressive. And we have other technology that we use at night. And in fact, the United States military is so good at night vision that often we choose to have our engagements, if that's what you want to call them, at night because even though it's harder for us to see, it's much, much harder for our opponents to see, and it gives us an advantage. So very often troops choose to move and operate in the nighttime. And then the last photo here, this one, that's USS Tennessee. She is a ballistic missile submarine, and she has 24 tubes on board with nuclear weapons in them, an amount of firepower that is just unbelievable. I believe something like more than all of the bombs used in World War II. And she's carrying less firepower now than during the Cold War because the missiles now have fewer warheads on them than they used to. And I'm not going to go into much details beyond that, but suffice to say that this is the backbone of our strategic deterrent. The Air Force also has other things, but these submarines hide. There are a few of them out there right now waiting below the ocean for the orders to fire, which will hopefully never come. And we want the whole world to know that they're out there, and we don't want them to know in detail where they are. And that's what their survivability is all about. So let's talk more about how the War Department is set up. And I apologize, this chart's a little bit on the old side. It says the Secretary of Defense is at the top, but that represents the Secretary of War and his deputy. And also, this box is the entire Office of the Secretary of War. And that's a few thousand people who set policy and make decisions. There are also some agencies within that box, including DARPA, which funds research. But then there are these three organizations underneath: the Department of the Army, the Department of the Navy, and the Department of the Air Force. Each of these are way larger than all of the, as they sometimes say, the purple communities, the joint communities. The Army, Navy, and Air Force combined have well over 1 million people in uniform, including active duty and reserve, and they also buy the vast majority of the equipment and they fund most of the research. So there are offices within all three of those departments that fund research that you might well be interested in working on. And so the Department of the Army has something called Army Research Lab, which has done a lot of work on, for example, night vision equipment, but also on armor and bullets and communication systems and so forth. And the Navy focuses on some of those things, but then also things related to the sea and like acoustics and so forth. And the Air Force does most of the research into space, but also aviation systems and lots of stuff. Also, the War Department is interested in many other things as well, including, for example, research on trauma medicine, because they wind up needing that often enough. And some of the research might not even obviously relate to warfighter needs, but they're doing a very broad range of stuff. They are a huge organization. Okay, so let's go. And so then there's USWRNE. So that stands for Undersecretary of War for Research and Engineering. That's a politically appointed position. reports directly to the Secretary of War, and they do not buy weapons equipment, although sometimes they're described as the Pentagon's top buyer. They set policy, and they also do make some decisions about go and no go for that relate to the services. So, for example, if they want to buy a new helicopter and it's brand new, then they're going to have to go to him for authority to move forward. However, most of those decisions and all of that work is done within these departments, not up here. Nevertheless, they set policy, and for a few decades now, they've been publishing lists of research that they think are the most important things to focus on. So this is a direct quote from their webpage. These are the most critical areas that our military will achieve dominance in, ensuring that our warfighters never enter a fair fight. You've probably heard that fair fight language a bit recently as people are talking about Iran. This quote is older than that, but it led to where we are today. So the first one is applied artificial intelligence. And everybody everywhere is talking about artificial intelligence, have been for a long time. And I can say a fair bit about it, but I'm going to leave that mostly to Shadei. Her part of this talk is going to focus there. The next one is biomanufacturing. And this is an interesting technology that I hadn't heard about until I started research for this presentation. Biomanufacturing is when you use biological systems and their mechanisms for creating proteins with DNA and RNA to manufacture materials that you want. I can't say that I fully understand why the DOW is saying that this particular technology is so important to them going forward. But if you're interested in it and you know about it, this is definitely a research area that has generated interest, and I would encourage you to look at it further. The next is contested logistics technologies. So this isn't a particular technology like the first two. This is anything that's going to help you get the stuff and the people you need where they need to go. And the Defense Department, sorry, the War Department is already really good at this, better probably than any other organization in the world, but they also know that it's difficult and important, and they constantly want to get better at it. So if you have some technology that you think can help, this is a good place to, this is what they're interested in. And also, if you have technology that you've been working on that maybe somehow could contribute to the logistics problem, this is a good way to frame it if you're going to be trying to pitch it to the Defense Department, the War Department. All right, quantum and battlefield information dominance. So, battlefield information dominance means knowing a lot about your enemy and yourself, which can be difficult as well, and making sure that your enemy knows less than they wish that they did. So, there's an awful lot to battlefield information dominance, and this is something that military people have been thinking about forever. George Washington was known to be particularly good at deceiving his enemies. But quantum brings a new knot into it. And quantum is particularly good for hiding your information. So if you use quantum technology, you can send encrypted messages better, and so this area includes all of that. So the War Department is interested in funding research that relates to quantum information and quantum computing because it can help them on the battlefield build and maintain information dominance. The next one is scaled hypersonics. Hypersonics, the border of hypersonics is a little bit fuzzy. It's something like Mach 5 or Mach 6. We have had things moving this, well, there have been things moving this speed since World War II. The V-2 rocket is probably considered a hypersonic. Certainly, the reentry vehicles for ballistic missiles are hypersonics. We had the space program from the 60s all the way through to the present. When they re-enter the atmosphere, that's hypersonic. But none of those things are what we mean by scaled hypersonics. The idea that you can have a weapon system that can just fire hypersonic round after hypersonic round, and that we can have lots of them. All three of the service departments, the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force, have programs now to try to develop hypersonic weapons, and the challenges are really big, but they think the payoff will be too. These are weapons often that are not ballistic, but instead what they consider a hypersonic glide vehicle. So you might launch something way up into space and then have it come down and maneuver through the atmosphere at a very high speed and go find its target. Uh, and there are lots of technical challenges. The temperatures are extreme. but there's lots of work that's been done. Lots of testing has been done. The Chinese and the Russians have also worked on weapons like this. And so if you have research that relates to that, the War Department is definitely interested. And I think Christine smiles every time I say Defense Department. And then the last thing on this list is scaled directed energy. Directed energy, if you think about it as a physicist, really means photons. This is mostly about laser weapons. The US military has been using lasers for a very long time for targeting and also more recently for communications. But now, when they're talking about scaling it up, they want to do essentially what was done in Star Wars and fire a laser at a target and have it blow up. I don't know if that's ever quite going to happen, but we definitely have systems now where they fire lasers at things and damage them and bring them down. And I think some of our ships at sea are now carrying weapons that carrying lasers as defensive weapons to protect against incoming threats, and that will continue. And they want to scale it up. So the Air Force for a while even had a program with a 747 that had a giant laser mounted in its nose. That program is no more, but they're still interested in research that may take them towards something like that. And so now that I've discussed the critical technology areas, I'm going to turn the floor over to Shadei, and she's going to give us a story of Atlas.
Just before Shadei starts, Dr. Greg, you have a raised hand, and would you be willing to take a question
Oh,
right now?
absolutely. Yes.
Dr. Amaka Wankwo, you are free to speak.
Hello, Amaka. You need to hit the unmute button, I think.
Apologies if my hand was up, that was done in error. Please continue, Shadei. Apologies for that.
Oh,
No problem.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. So, good afternoon, everyone. I am going to be talking about Atlas, which is going to just give you an inside look at an artificial intelligence defense scenario. Next slide, please. Okay, so what is Atlas? Atlas is an artificial intelligence application that can help analyze, predict, and support humans. It can verify and ingest sensor streams and compare signals to historical patterns to classify objects with confidence. It also can predict trajectories and impact zones, continuously recalculating as new data arrives to prioritize risks. Also, Atlas can recommend actions and give uh, recommendations for human approval. So, Atlas can make a recommendation based on the information that it receives and then present that information, and then a human, the military term you might have heard before, having a human in the loop to actually make that decision for ethical reasons. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is an actual scenario, not a real scenario, but just a scenario to give you some insight on what may transpire if Atlas is in the loop and helping to make decisions. So I'm just going to read it. You can read it to yourself, and then the next slide we'll just talk about, your thoughts on the scenario. All right. The siren didn't scream, just a soft chime in the command room. Captain Mara glanced up as Atlas, the base's artificial intelligence system, traced a thin red arc over the coastline. To the naked eye, the sky outside was empty, but to Atlas it wasn't. An unidentified aerial object was detected, said the artificial intelligence evenly. Low altitude, civilian probability 4%. The data unfolded across the glass wall. Speed, direction, projected impact zones. Atlas didn't issue commands. It never did. It carried the weight of possibilities and laid them out for humans to decide. The object's path bent toward a large power plant. Captain Mara steadied herself, scanning the confidence ratings while her team verified the sensors. Atlas recalculated instantly, absorbing every new data point, anticipating outcomes before anyone else could. Recommendation, she asked. Defensive interception, advised Atlas. Human authorization required. Okay, so now here's what the chat is open for you to drop your opinion of the scenario. What do you think Captain Mara should do? If you can see on the screen, she's monitoring the incoming red arc that was like discussed. And keep in mind that it's there's probably it could be a way more in-depth scenario, but just for, the art of conversation or to give a description, it's not as detailed as obviously a real scenario. So we are aware of that. But just you want to drop in the comments what you think Captain Mara should do, or you have any inputs that you want to comment about the scenario. Yes, it is. Thank you, Dr. Hall. So I'll give about maybe a full minute for people to put their comments in.
And Dr. Tori Roulex-Smith would like to go back to the slide with the scenario.
Done.
I'm still waiting to see if someone says that she should push the button or not. Okay, there we go. Thank you. This is great feedback.
There's some interesting questions in the chat. So Dr.
Mhm.
McGuire asked, would there be input from other soldiers in the area that she could communicate with for more human eyes on the scene?
Yeah. Um, in the real scenario, we would definitely hope so. No, and there definitely would be. Like I said, this one is just kind of a general one to get us, thinking of what artificial intelligence would look like integrated with the weapon system. But of course, in the real scenario, I'm sure there's a lot more numbers, a lot more information, and maybe a lot more channels to go through before the authorization is given. However, also one thing to think about is this scenario and the real one, there's never going to be a lot of time, right? So, but yeah, I see them as they pop up and then they're not staying. And these are but everything I see is really good feedback and is really, um, I don't know, Christine, or are you
Oh, I
able
like
to?
Chris Atchinson's question. Is there a chain of command to authorize action? So there's definitely a chain of command. And in these kinds of control rooms, the senior person in the control room, which in this case would be Captain Mara, is authorized to fire if they decide to do so. That's clearly the intent of the scenario. And a sense of who Captain Mara is, I don't know all the details. She's not a real person, but a captain in the Navy has probably been in the service at least 20 years, possibly much more. They're certainly a college graduate, may well have a master's degree, has probably commanded either squadrons of pilots and everything, all the people associated with that, or possibly a ship at sea as well. So she is an experienced operator.
Okay. I did just expand and I see them all. Okay. I see push it. I see someone said I want to push the button, would love to know what the specific confidence ratings are. It's a good one. This is all like really good feedback, which was all I really wanted was just to get us talking and thinking about what this could look like in, this very basic scenario. And um, obviously in the real life scenario, there's so much more at stake and so much more information needed. But I think the discussion was great, and maybe we could talk about it a little bit more after I move through these next couple of slides.
So we'll go to slide 8 now.
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so basically this slide will just talk a little bit about the advantages, which is the speed and accuracy. If you remember in this scenario, Atlas was the first to notice this what was incoming from, a very far distance, and being able to give some basic data. So that 4% civilian, it could have went up and down as it did some sensing data as it got closer. And then also another advantage is the operator support. So this is giving the operator some visuals, and even if it is civilian, but it's moving too close to the power grid, she has to, or whoever is in charge will have to make that decision. So basically, this is a tool that's meant to support, but in this scenario, and hopefully in any weapon scenario, it's not the final say. And then consistency and learning. So the importance of me sharing this scenario is for everyone to know the importance of having smart, competent, uh, math-based, STEM-based students working on these type of problems, because this artificial intelligence is only going to be as good as it's programmed. So the more different type of scenarios is programmed on the front end, obviously, the more consistent and better it will be for future use. Next slide, please. Also, for this last slide, it just talks about the risk and ethics, and there are so many more than just these two, but these are uh, two that I will discuss today. And one thing to keep in mind is that the AI is being developed so fast for so many different areas that the regulations are kind of being built in the same time. So it's out here and it's being used. So that's one thing to keep in mind, that the first one is the operational limitations. Over reliance on artificial intelligence, it's just the tool. It's not ever, I don't see it ever being 100% accurate. And also the ethical and legal concerns. Um, the accountability. I made the decision based off AI. AI was it was not heading toward the power plant, or we thought that it was a low risk of being civilian, but it was a high risk of civilian. All of these are major concerns. And like I said, while the artificial intelligence is being developed rapidly, it's really important that we're using our best minds of scientists and engineers to program it, so that there are some ethical, I guess, requirements built in on the front end of how we're using it, especially in this scenario, or particularly weapon systems. Next slide, please. Okay, so if this is interesting for you, or you have any type of math or science or STEM in general background, there are so many opportunities out there. These are only a couple of current funding opportunities that I just wanted to mention. If you're just 1% interested in this work, or you know someone who may be, please feel free to get the information of Dr. Davis or myself. We would love to reach out and talk about these opportunities that are listed, and more opportunities. The first opportunity is with the Department of Energy. And I'll just read right here where it says that the U.S. Department of Energy is advancing the Genesis mission to tackle the nation's most complex science and technology challenges through artificial intelligence models and frameworks. And there's some more information down there to include the website. Also, another opportunity is with the National Science Foundation, quantum and nanotechnology infrastructure, and that would be related to advancing quantum and nanotechnology research. So, like I said, if this is of interest of you, at least 1%, I hope that you will reach out to myself or Dr. Davis so we can talk more in depth and get some, I guess, some of these proposals written and submitted on behalf of not just research universities, but also the national laboratories and some industry partners. Next slide, please.
Okay, thank you, Shadei. So there's also funding available directly from the Defense Department, as well as working with defense contractors. All of those things are possible. And there'll be a talk next month where we'll talk about security clearances, and that ties into it as well. But now we're back to the CTAs, and I'd like you to visit the chat again and let us know if you're doing any research that you think relates to one or more of these areas. And if you're not sure how it relates, but you think it might be close, put it in, and we'd love to talk about it and see if we
Absolutely.
can find a way to tie it in and say, oh yes, the Air Force needs that for their contested logistics problems or whatever it might be. So let's see the chat start lighting up again. I guess these will take a longer to type because they're going to say, well, I do research on metallurgy and I suppose that making better wheels for trucks, maybe that's logistics related, and we could build a lighter, stronger frame for a truck, then that would definitely qualify, actually. So Lena asks about applied artificial intelligence. So Shadei's example is absolutely that. And defensive weapons, like she put in her scenario, is a big part of what people are thinking about with artificial intelligence. It's also been used in an offensive way. They did use artificial intelligence, and I don't know any of the details, but I read some stuff on the internet for targeting in Iran, figuring out what places they want, which targets they want to service. And what was the article was that article was making fun of them. But what it said was they're angry at Anthropic and they don't want people using Claude anymore. And so, isn't it interesting to know that they just used Claude to help them attack Iran, or sorry, engage Iran? And it's true, but that's another use. And I think there are more. Shadei, do you want to say something about that?
No, I mean, I think you covered it. So basically, um, artificial intelligence is there's a lot of different scenarios. So I gave scenario that was based in to like a weapon system, but I mean, like Greg said, it can be built in to anything, even ChatGPT, or I guess those are some of the more common forms of the artificial intelligence. But it is important to note the level that it will be used by the Department of War is will have more of an integration of, defense tactics, systems, and we'll need computer sciences to build that programming language on the front end to recognize many different defense scenarios to, I guess, to do what it did in this situation, which is to provide guidance on basically, in this case, in many cases, when to fire. If that
Yeah.
answers your question, yeah.
So it's interesting. They always talk about they want a man in the loop on these systems that are defensive weapons. But I'm not in the majority, I don't think, on this. But I think we've been using artificial intelligence for these kinds of problems for a long time and without men in the loop. So the Patriot missile system that became famous in the first Persian Gulf War, so Operation Desert Storm, Iraq was firing missiles into Israel. Israel had deployed our Patriot systems, which would hit the inbound missiles and try to blow them up. That system is not one where there's a person sitting at a control panel who pushes a button that says fire. What you do is you turn that system into standby mode, and when it detects something that fits the parameters of an inbound threat, it fires on its own. So the man in the loop just turns the system on. And we've had defensive air defense systems like that for a long time. Around the same time, there was a system on Navy ships called with many names. Something has many names, you know they like it. They call it R2D2, the Sea Whiz, the Phalanx. It kind of looks like R2D2, but it's got a big gun sticking out the bottom, and it fires a machine gun at inbound missiles. And those have engaged enemy targets a few times and failed as well at certain times. And that's another system where the crew of the ship or somebody on the crew of the ship turns that system on, and then it will see something coming in that matches its parameters and open fire. Oh yeah, someone's working on hemp. and its potential for biomanufacturing. I have heard that hemp is a phenomenally useful plant, that you can do all kinds of great things with it. And uh, there's also an article from George Washington from obviously many, many years ago talking about what a great crop it is to grow. So cool to know that it still may be useful to the War Department. All right. Delphine Davis, who, as far as I know, is not a relative of mine, but I like you. Uh, physical properties, drug interactions of opioid and non-opioids, computationally and experimentally recyclable plastics, synthesis of biosensors for drug detection. So I am 100% certain that some of those things are of interest to people in the War Department in general. And can we say that it's tied to logistics and therefore that it's one of the 6 areas? I don't know, maybe. Um, when you talk about recyclable plastics, that definitely could relate to logistics technologies. And biosensors also could relate to information dominance. I don't know that the timescales for that and the timescales of battlefield information relate or not, but it seems plausible at least. So part of the magic sauce to being able to work with the War Department is being able to use their language. So saying that I've got this really cool thing, not going to interest them, but saying I have this technology that will help you solve this problem, that definitely is their language. So I think this is basically our last chart. We've got our closing chart here where we've got CR codes and you can look at to see future QEM events and to find all the Heroes Fellows. We also have a webinar feedback form if you'd like to leave us some data to tell us how you think we're doing. I'll leave this chart up for another few minutes and we're happy to field any more questions that you've got or things you want to talk about, even if it's not exactly the form of a question. So Tori asked about using AI to forecast equipment failures in defense applications. Um, this is definitely of interest. I've worked on a few problems back in my days at IDA about projecting maintenance needs. Back at that time, the most recent time I worked on one of those, I think, was 2013. People weren't talking about it as AI, but then again, they weren't talking about air defense as AI either. But they were talking about having a computer system that would project how many tires are we going to need in the motor pool as, per month or per year or next year or whatever, and how many brake pads. And they would also look at aircraft and ships and try to project how much they need. So so that is definitely a problem of logistics that people are interested in, and that you could tie that to 2 of the CTAs if you want to. You can tie that to
Absolutely fair.
logistics, and you can tie it to AI. Candy McGuire is working in STEM workforce awareness. So you're interested to know if the Department of War would be interested in funding education research. The Department of War engages in education in many different ways. They run schools for senior officers. They run schools for every actually they have schools specifically for senior officers, and they've got schools for every other kind of uniformed military person as well. I have definitely seen them fund research that relates to education and training. They also run schools for kids because if you are a 26-year-old Marine and you have a 5-year-old son and you've just been told that you're shipping to Japan and you don't speak Japanese and your kids don't speak Japanese, then there aren't schools there that you might want to enroll your kid in. So the War Department has their own schools for you. And so they do research to make those schools good too. They also have schools like that at some places within the United States, the history of which is very interesting. Um, and so yes, they're definitely people there interested in education as well. I don't know off the top of my head how to find them, but that sounds like a fun project to work on, and we can try to figure out how to locate the people who are interested in that research. But yes, 100%, there are people interested in education research within the War Department of all different kinds, including K through 12.
Yeah, I want to speak on that too. Yeah, definitely the workforce development is key for Department of War and a lot of the federal agencies, making sure that as everything's advanced, that we have the workforce to support this type of work. I specifically coordinated a program for workforce development for the Department of Department of Defense. And one of the things that they did was they partnered with the community college and university. And one of the things that the university did was their engineering electives were taught by Navy scientists and engineers. So when these students graduated, they already had a clearance and they already had uh, inside knowledge of what was needed by the Navy, so they were very valuable. And so that was one way that that workforce development program uh, was beneficial to both parties. So I would like to connect with you more as far as the STEM workforce development if you're interested, Ms. McGuire.
And Martin Davis has raised their hand. Oh, not anymore. I was going to allow Martin a chance to speak. Martin Davis raised their hand again. Okay. Martin, you are able to come off mute right now.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Great presentation. By the way, definitely appreciate it. This is very interesting to me because I'm retired Navy. I'm a retired Navy senior chief, and I'm also a program chair for cybersecurity and computer science at a community college. And I'm very heavily involved in the workforce development. So I'm definitely would like an opportunity to connect to see if there's something we can do as far as what I'm already doing at the school that will partner up with what the Department of War needs.
That's awesome. Sounds great to me.
Yes. So in terms of practically how to do that, we need to find the commands that are working on those kinds of problems, and they're out there, and also contractors who are working on it. I think a lot of the time, research gets done for the Department of War through subcontracts. So the Department of War issues an awful lot of contracts to Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, RTX. I'm sure you, as a retired senior chief, have heard of these companies and the stuff that they produce.
Yes.
And so they get very large contracts to develop things, to improve things, and whatever. And they often will subcontract with smaller institutions
Okay.
to help them out. So that's another potential way to do it.
Mr. Davis, what state are you in?
Oh, you don't mean me.
Whatever way, just how it works, or what do we need to do to connect with you guys? I don't know how we're supposed to do that or what that looks like going forward, but I definitely need to connect to kind of parse this out further.
All right. So I'm going to put the share back up, and I'll show you the answer to that question.
And I think Tarina asked Mr. Davis what state you're in and the name
Well,
of your
hold on
community
just a
college.
sec. So yeah, so
Oh,
to
I'm
get to
at
the thing, if you go to the Heroes webpage here, you will get contact information for all of the heroes. Reach out to whichever
okay.
one you like. We've got words there. Now, it's also true that we've been assigned to geographic regions. That's why Tarina asked. So if you're in
No,
the state of
that's
Got
Virginia,
not why I asked.
oh,
And
well,
you're not sharing your screen right now.
I'm not sharing my screen. Oh, is that better?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Well, we do.
Okay.
The Hero Fellows do also have geographic regions, although Tarina asked for other reasons, and she can speak for herself for sure. So it's possible that if you reach out to someone, they may say, "Oh, well, let's introduce you to this person." But yes, any one of us would be very happy to talk with you and help you get started looking for help.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm in Louisiana, located at in Chalmette, Louisiana, Nunez Community College, which is basically right next door to New Orleans. Is where I am.
Okay. So the reason that I asked was because there's just been a release of a Delta Regional Authority Workforce Development Grant. Are you aware of that one?
I am not, and of course, being in a community college, that's basically how we get our funding. So everything we do is grant based.
Okay. So I just put a link in the chat to everyone. The Delta Regional Authority, like I said, just released on, I think it's on the 17th of this month, some grant opportunities. So I just wanted to share that with you if you were in one of the states that it's engaged in. That's why I asked you.
Okay.
Okay. Do you see the link?
Yes, I've already clicked on it.
Yeah, so grants are the most common way for all universities and colleges to bring in research funding, and grants are great. I would encourage you to be open-minded to other possibilities as well. I don't know I've never heard of legal impediments to that. So, and lots of universities have now started doing other things as well, contracts of various sorts with all different kinds of people. So, so keep that open as well. But yes, there are grants to be found. I think there was something else in the chat, but when I went back to the screen share, I lost the chat, at least temporarily. So let me find that. Shadei, do you see that next question? I remember seeing it.
Oh, yes, I see one here at 1240. You mentioned framing work in the form of what it solves for Department of War, but aside from very broad categories and fund announcement, how are civilians to know what are specific issues that the warfighters need solved? I see this as a significant issue for trying to propose a project to any Department of War funding source.
Shadei, do you want to speak to that, or would you like me to talk?
You can get started. I mean, I have my thoughts on it
Well,
too,
I'll
but
start by
you
saying looking at any solicitation you find or looking at RFPs that are out there, they'll tell you what they're looking for to begin with. And oftentimes I would think it's just like applying for NSF grants. My understanding is if you're applying for an NSF grant, it's a really good idea to call the program manager. Do something likewise at the Defense Department. Shadei?
yeah, I would say that one of the things I talked about in my previous if I'm not sure if you are associated with the college or university, but I've heard a lot of the universities say that when they identify a particular funding opportunity, that they also work with the subject matter expert in that field, someone maybe who's previously worked with the Department of War, Department of Energy, who can give them some insight of not only, you know, what that area is, but why it's critical, some of the issues that they may run into, so they can give a really a well laid out proposal, if that's what the question was asking. I was a little confused. It just said something about regular civilians, so I'm not sure if it's just regular civilians or associated with college or university who are applying for funding. That was, I guess, my question.
Craig's
Yeah,
raising his hand.
I elaborate on that question by civilian. I mean, I work at a university, but I have no military background, right?
Correct. Mhm.
And so I have no inside experience of what really these issues are. And yes, there's, I read funding announcements and, just like NSF and stuff, the funding announcements are broad. They're talking about a specific area. It's up to the researcher proposing the project to know the exact things within that field that needs solved. And as somebody outside of the military, it's really hard to try to even get into that door because yeah, there's opportunities for what I do there, but it also has to be fundable. It has to be framed within the context that they want it framed in, and knowing what that context is. And as somebody outside the military, that's really hard to even envision what that is because a lot of that's requires clearances and security.
Yeah.
That so it's not just like publicly available research where we can normally go to for NSF if you want to be an expert area and you're working on it. You could access the papers, see what all's out there, what's done, what hasn't been done, figure out where the gaps are and things that can be improved.
Exactly.
That's the problem I see with engaging here, and that's why I'm trying to understand how to do that. So I guess the subject matter expert is one way, But I could say at our institution, that's not going to be an option to really have. I don't have
Oh
money
my
to do those
gosh.
kinds of hires.
You're making it so easy for me to plug the Heroes Fellow service. Give us a call. We do have subject matter expertise, and we should be able to help you with
Okay.
that. Um, security clearance absolutely can be an issue here. It can be a double-edged sword. As I said, I'll go into a lot more depth than that next month. But there are ways that you can get a security clearance. It can't happen overnight, but it can happen. And there's a lot you can do without them, um, but not everything. And there may be some funding opportunities you can't even learn about until you've got a clearance, but there are others that you would be able to do stuff with. Um, so yeah, give me a call and we can talk about your specific problem. And also, I guess we've got 9 minutes left in this time slot. There are other questions. I think it might be too personal to go into your stuff in front of this big audience, but I was thinking if there was nothing else to do, it might be interesting. But I probably would need more research too. But
No,
now
I'll
we've got
definitely try to reach out because
yep.
I appreciate the offer there. Because yeah, that's something I know there's lots of applications for what I do, but as a plant scientist, needing somebody that's also an engineer, in finding the right people to bring in to make it relevant to those funding opportunities. But there is a lot of opportunities there. I mean,
And I just want to add to that before we go to Martin. Not only do we have these two wonderful experts, we have additional expert. Her name is April Erickson. She's been big in DoD as well. So we have at least three people that can help you in the subject matter expert situation. But I also wanted to let you know the whole purpose of QEM's existence is to do what we're doing with the heroes, and that's to pair people who don't have the connections they need in some of the research areas with those who do. So even beyond heroes, QEM, that is our mission. So if even on a broader scale, if it's not just you and there's other people at your institution who need those kind of links and connections, that's what QEM is for, and that's why we exist. So don't forget about us as a whole, and it's not just for uh, this particular topic. So spread the word about QEM and the Heroes program, please, if you would.
Yeah, that was absolutely perfectly said, Tarina. And I just want to reiterate what she said, and that the concern is valid, but that is what we're here for, to help bridge that gap. Absolutely.
All right, let's move on to Martin's question.
Oh, it wasn't really particularly a question. It was just the last gentleman's comments kind of just had me thinking. And when you guys were talking about this is why you do this as far as QEM and heroes, is that an effort to bring all of us who are kind of on this call into that network as well? Because just listening when you need certain people, like I have an active SCI security clearance. So like if I could help somebody who's looking to do something, but they don't necessarily have the clearance, if you have people that network with clearances as well as the expertise, because like I say, I am a computer scientist and those things as well, because that's something that you guys are looking to do also.
Yes, we also have if you are a subject matter expert, we have a SME database that we ask those who are interested in serving other institutions, in our programs. We have a series of programs that tie people together. So what I will do is, while Greg and Shadei are wrapping up in these last few minutes, I'll go ahead and put it in the chat. And so if anyone on this call is a subject matter expert, you can put your information in our database. It does not guarantee any future jobs or anything like that, but it does give us your information so that if you have the expertise in an area where we're doing a workshop or doing a seminar series or something of that nature, we may call on you and ask you if you're willing to provide your expertise in that event or activity. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that up and drop that in the chat. And I thank you for being willing to serve.
Hi, this is Lena. I'm sorry to Mr. Davis. I actually have a project that I'm in the early stages of working on with another professor at another university. I would love to connect with you, and I don't know if it's appropriate for me and Tarina. You can answer how to make that connection if I put my email in the chat, or what do you recommend?
That's perfectly acceptable. You do not have to go through us, and you're on this call, and you all can connect one-on-one.
Okay, thanks.
I assume I'm not the Davis you meant.
Uh, uh, Martin Davis.
No
Yeah,
worries.
I just put my email address in the chat.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we have about 5 minutes left. We can take additional questions, engage in more conversation.
Oh wow, my brother graduated from Wilberforce.
Oh,
I love all these cross-cutting connections today. This was excellent.
Well, my only tie to Wilberforce is that when I applied for the GRE, they wanted to send me there to take it, which was a 2-hour drive from where I started. And I'd never heard of it before.
we're small,
Near
but
Dayton,
mighty.
right?
But mighty. Right, we're right
Okay.
across from Central State.
Mhm.
All right.
And
Brad
I think I
Lustgrove.
heard
Okay, so Brad's another Heroes Fellow with experience working with the Department of War. He was at Naval Research Lab for a while.
Well, without further questions, I'm going to thank you all for attending this webinar today. What a great discussion and informative presentation. Please remember to visit our QEM events page and our heroes webpage to learn how to connect with our heroes and sign up for future webinars. And our webinar feedback form is also open if you'd like to provide your thoughts on today's webinar. Thank you so much for attending today and have a great afternoon.
Thank you all.